welcome back to the People Business. I've got a former teammate, a former alumni of the North Akron Wrestling Club, teammate at North Akron, teammate at Walsh Jesuit. He's in town filming the 10-year war documentary between Walsh Jesuit St. Ed's, the Hall of Famer, Jeff Knupp.
Thanks for that intro, Frank. It's awesome to be back. It's been 25 years since I feel like I went off to college and moved out, but it's always awesome to come home.
Yeah, man, it's great to see you. And dude, you haven't aged.
Well, I appreciate that. I now think that's a good thing. When I was earlier in my career and I still looked like I was 12 years old, it was a little tough to get people to take me serious. But now that I'm in my mid-40s, I'm pretty happy that I don't look like I'm in my mid-40s.
Right. You know, and it's crazy because, you know, you see people that are, you know, you're like, wow, how old is that person? And anymore, it's hard to tell how old people are. You know, there's people that are, you know, older than you that you think are younger than you, and you think they're older than you, and it's, you know, it's hard to tell, man.
I've made that mistake a lot. Not a lot, but a few times recently, where I just assumed by the way people looked that they were older than me.
Right.
And they have kids that are older than my kids or the same age, and so I'll start saying stuff, and then I'll realize, oh wait, I'm like 5 years older than you.
I know.
Yeah.
How old are yours now? Your kids?
Yeah. So I got 3 boys, 11, 9, and 3.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we took a little time off and then decided to go for a third.
That's awesome though. So you're experiencing again. So you get your 11-9, you go through the diapers, and now you break back into getting them out of diapers and.
Yeah. So my 3-year-old is probably the most advanced with the potty training.
Yeah.
All boys, so it's slow for all of them.
Yeah, because none of us are really good at that.
No, exactly.
Compared to girls.
Yeah, exactly. But my 3-year-old is. It was funny. I was on a conference call from the house yesterday morning, and my wife's out of town on business, so it was me and the 3 boys, and I'm on a conference call. Fortunately, it's just my boss, and my 3-year-old runs out, "Daddy, I gotta go potty." And my boss just starts laughing. I'm like, yeah, everybody understands. We all got kids.
Right. Yeah, that's the world we live in today, though. You know, like you're on virtual calls, and your kids will walk in and. You know, interrupt and like, you know, people, you know, at first it was kind of like embarrassing, but now we're, you know, a couple years into this world now, it's just the way it is.
Right, exactly. And that was my boss. He chuckled and then he was like, okay, I'm just gonna go back to business. Like,
right.
It was like no interruption at all. It's just like, that's the norm.
It is the norm, and it's the new norm, and it's like that's just the way it goes. I mean, we've all been in that position now, So Jeff's in town. He actually just got done doing his interview, right? You just got done interviewing at Walsh.
Yeah, I think I was the first one on our side to go.
You were? Okay.
Yeah, so I think they did the St. Ed's ones maybe last week, and then I was the first one this morning, and he said he's here for the next 4 days or so.
Yeah, he's recording for the next 4 days. So let's start off and talk a little bit about, so you got into wrestling. And I remember, because you're 1 year younger than me, and I remember when you came up to North Akron, right?
Yep.
How did you get to North Akron?
Yeah, so I started wrestling in kindergarten. I'll be brief on this one. Grew up in Wadsworth. I started wrestling when I was 5 years old. Some neighborhood kids were beating me up, and I said, hey, how'd you learn how to do that? They said, oh, we wrestle. You should come to practice with us. So Wadsworth didn't have a program, so we went to Norton, which is kind of the neighboring town.
Yeah.
And did that kindergarten. You know, started in kindergarten, and we went to Firestone, and that's where all the meets were. And North Akron just dominated Firestone, like in a league of their own. So I always saw that, and it was at some point when, like, it was probably 3 or 4 years before I won my own first match. And finally, when I started winning matches in like 3rd or 4th grade, I thought that'd be kind of nice to go be with the good kids.
Yeah.
And then I think it was in 4th grade, my dad, there was an article in the Beacon Journal, and it was about 2 North Akron kids that had gone to the PA State Championships and went to all these tournaments, and they wrestled like 150 matches in a year. And I was getting like 15 matches in a year. And he showed me the article, and it was Jimmy and Johnny.
Okay.
So I still remember that article, and it was reading the article about Jimmy and Johnny. So Jimmy Johnson, Johnny McGee, and seeing, I was like, man, I want to wrestle 150 matches. I want to go to PA States. Turns out I couldn't go to PA States because you guys got us kicked out.
Right, yeah.
But it was right after that. So I was in 5th grade that I saw that article and went up to Patterson Park. Somehow my dad reached out to Bill or somebody and went up to Patterson Park and just done with Norton.
And there it was.
Yeah, and then go to North Akron.
And never turned back after that.
Yeah.
So what was your first impression of North Akron?
It was a little, Ben asked me about this too, it was a little different than Norton.
Yeah.
Norton was a bunch of kids rolling around having fun. Like, North Akron was just, like, it was a bunch of tough, hard-nosed kids that this was their alternative to getting into street fights. And they just came in and they were just tougher, right? Like, I got my ass kicked when I was in kindergarten. Sorry about the language.
No, you're good.
I got beat up pretty bad when I was in kindergarten, 1st grade. But then I got to the point in Norton where I was kind of beating everybody, and it wasn't that tough. And I never came home. After that first week in kindergarten, I don't think I ever came home with a bloody nose or black eye or anything. When I got to North Akron, it was just a whole different level. Like, it was funny. My parents told me this after the fact. There were a couple of times on Monday when I'd go back to school, and this was after a tournament, not necessarily practice, but I went into school and I had bruises all over me, and my parents got pulled aside asking, hey, your kid's got some bruises, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, he's just a wrestler. And so, yeah, it was just a different level.
Completely different level for me too, walking in, being a kind of a farm kid going into this place that was, they were so much tougher. It was like, it was, really kind of scary at first.
That's what I was joking a little bit with Ben this morning, because he was saying how, I wasn't one of the bad boys. Right. That was,
and I wasn't.
Yeah, you were like, we were kind of on. Well, you were probably on the edge, not on the bad, like in the. And then Joe and I come along, and we're all of a sudden we're like the good kids.
Yeah, you guys,
We're like the choir boys relative to. And he asked if, like, maybe not being the bad boys was part of the downfall of Walsh's dynasty. Like, well, I don't know about that, but I would say that, like, Joe and I were softer than Clint and Jimmy and Chad and those guys, right? We just weren't, certainly at that age, we just weren't as tough of kids.
No, because it's hard to, the only way you get to be that tough of a kid is to go be around kids that are like that tough. I mean, like, that's not inbred in everyone.
No.
To just walk in and be that way. And their life experiences were completely different also, right? But I would have never, like, got to that level if it wasn't for that place, in terms of,
Yeah, I think it was the same with all of us, right? We were talking this morning, too, about, Bill's philosophy. Like, Ben asked why we wrestled St. Ed so much, and asked about getting the Ironman started, and I went into, it wasn't even just that, like, we went to Eastern Pennsylvania to wrestle Easton and Nazareth and Northampton, and we wrestled Blair Academy, and we went out to Reno, and it was like, Bill's philosophy was iron sharpens iron, and like, if you're gonna call somebody number one in the nation at the end of the year, they're gonna be number one because they beat the number 2, 3, and 4, not because some guy writing a newspaper decides that he thinks they're the best. And so Bill's philosophy, and I agree with it, that's why we're all good, is you got to beat the best to be the best.
100%. Yeah, it's such a great point. And so when you were in 8th grade, how big were you?
Oh man, I always get this because my 11-year-old is going into 6th grade now. So when I was in 6th grade, I was this height. So I was 6'1".
You were 6'1" in 6th grade. I remember you being huge.
Yeah. I was 6'1" in 6th grade and probably 180 pounds.
Wow.
Like I wore a size 12 shoe in the 5th grade. I wear an 11.5 shoe now. And according to my last physical, I've shrunk half an inch too.
Really?
I don't know if I believe that, but so I have not grown in height since 6th grade. Okay. So I was 180 pounds in 6th grade. So I was a fat kid too, though. Like, I was not super muscular. Even we're even especially in 8th and 9th grade. So then 9th grade I wrestled 189, and like I was a 14-year-old kid wrestling 18, 19-year-old men.
Absolutely. At that weight?
Yeah, it was pretty intimidating, some of them.
I can imagine, because I was a lightweight, so at least but when you're a heavier weight.
Yeah, it was like the disparity in body types between an 18-year-old. Clearly 18-year-olds are still kids, but an 18-year-old kid and a 14-year-old kid, especially at that weight, is pretty significant.
Yeah, Jeff's. The one thing I'll never forget is your freshman year. Walsh Jesuit St. Ed's dual meet. ESPN is there. They were there all week prepping for that, right? It's interesting because Ben, seeing it from the St. Ed's side, they're like, why is ESPN there? They've won 1 or 2 state titles. We've won
40,
right,
20, whatever.
Yeah. So I didn't realize, but that put a chip on their shoulder a little bit, that we were getting that type of, that type of credit, that type of, and they came to kick our ass that night. But so for everyone out there, so Jeff, the match pretty much comes down to Jeff, and you had to go out there right after Joey O'Neill, right?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. There were a couple of swings throughout that.
There were some big swings,
but it was certainly before Joey. So maybe it was Jamie or Scott, or even just before that, we won some big matches. And I had wrestled. So Joey O'Neill wrestled Sam Niter, who was one of St. Ed's all-time studs. I had wrestled Sam earlier that year at Medina.
Did you?
Yeah, Sam had bumped up to wrestle Anthony Gary.
Okay.
In the finals. Like he purposely bumped up to meet Anthony Gary in the finals, and I just happened to make it to the semis and wrestled Sam. And obviously he beat me, but I got to wrestle him. And I wrestled Joey every day in practice, and Joey's, God, he was the toughest kid I ever wrestled in my life.
Was he?
Yeah. And so when it came to that match, I was certain that not only was I certain that Joe was going to win, there was no way in hell he was going to get pinned. Like I felt like we were going to win that match, and then my match wasn't going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, Joe, it was one of those like cement mixer type thing. It was a kind of just a fast move where he got caught, I think.
It's the exact same move that Damon Williams caught him on the
year before. That's right. Yeah. I remember I watched that video. So it was one of those where I was pretty relaxed. It was like, oh, it's not, I'm just going to go have fun in front of a big crowd. Doesn't matter what the outcome is because we won. And then it was like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
That changed. And so Zach and I wrestled, I think, 7 times that year. So we wrestled, the first time we met was it was my first high school tournament. It wasn't even like a real varsity tournament. It was, but we didn't send a whole team. It was like just some random tournament at the beginning of the year, long before Medina.
Okay.
And so I met him there, and then we wrestled 1 or 2 other times. I think that was like our 3rd or 4th match. So even at that point, we had already, we knew each other pretty well. And so it was like, oh man. And we were like, in our 7 matches, they were all 1-point matches, right? So
they were all 1 point.
Yeah, or 1 or 2
yeah,
points.
So
they were all
close.
Super close, yeah. So I knew it was going to be a close match. And it was like, well, here we go.
Was that triple overtime? Overtime?
Double, yeah. It was the coin. It was back when you just had you did the on your feet for the first overtime, and then the coin flip, and if you get out, you win. If you get held down, you lose. And I won and the coin flip and chose down, and we won.
Do you remember what it felt like? That moment when, because you had to be absolutely exhausted. Number one, you've wrestled, an overtime, and then
a long match against, and I don't remember exactly. I just remember it like a sense of relief.
Yeah.
And now, almost 30 years later, it's like I don't remember I don't have the vivid memory of the feeling, but I still have this thought of, man, I'm really glad I won that match.
So am I.
Like, that would have sucked to have lost.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, I know.
You know, I mean, I would have. If it meant you only won one time out of those 7, it would have been. You know, that match was probably.
It's funny. So he won more than I did, and he might have won. I think he won 4. So I think I won the first match like 1-0. And it was the same deal. I got out, but I rode him. And then I won that match. And then the only other, and he won 4 of them, and I forget when those were. But then I beat him at the cadet national finals in overtime too. Did
you really?
Yeah.
So
in overtime.
Wow. So you won your cadet title, national title, beating him.
Okay. Yeah, beating another Ohio kid in the finals. Yeah.
Wow. That was really, really special. I'll never forget that ended with Bill Barger getting the Gatorade jug bottle, the big thing dumped on him, and him saying, "He's from North Akron, and he's only a freshman." Remember? Do you remember that?
Kind of. Yeah.
It's on the footage. I just watched it recently.
Yeah.
You know, he did that because he's from North Akron.
Yeah.
But it was really, really special, man. And so you go on and you place as a freshman, and then you go on to win 3 state titles. And I was reading this earlier today, and I didn't realize it. You won your last 93 or 94 matches in a row in high school.
Yeah. So I lost 1. Do you remember, so your junior year when we went out to Eastern PA and we had a quad meet with, it was Nazareth, Easton, and Northampton?
Yes.
So this was like but it was the week before Ironman. And Northampton, I think we were number 1 and Northampton was number 2. And Northampton had some pretty good upper weights. So it was kind of like that dual meet started to play out similar to the Eds one the previous year. But then I think Joey won his match over a stud, a PA state champ. And so I had a really good kid too, but all I had to do was not get pinned for us to win the dual meets. I kind of went out there and stalled and just played it safe and lost to him like 5 to 1 or something like that.
Okay.
So then I wrestled him the very next week in the Ironman finals and beat him in the finals. So that match was the last one I lost.
Wow. So that was first week.
It was our first meet.
First meet of the season.
Yeah, sophomore year.
That was to start. Most teams go out there and they start a season with a warm up. I mean, look at NCAA in football, or Ohio State, Alabama. They don't go start off with like a
LSU or a
yeah.
I know.
We went and wrestled 3 teams that were ranked in like the top 10 in the country. First matches of the year. Here you go.
Yeah.
Like no such thing as a warm up.
Hope your summer was busy.
Right.
Right.
Hope you were productive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing. People don't realize the schedule that Bill created.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were wrestling 40 matches a year. I don't even I know college kids these days don't wrestle 40 matches a year.
No.
And high school kids probably don't either. And it certainly wasn't flying out to Reno, driving out to Philadelphia, going to the Ironman.
Do you remember when we went to Reno?
Yeah.
Do you that was like
so
our families couldn't get out. You remember that? There was a huge storm. Snowstorm.
Oh really? Okay.
And our parents and all people couldn't go because so they put just the wrestlers on to get them out there. It was a pretty weird, to think back. I forgot about all this, but
I remember stories from the tournament. I don't remember that.
So we had a hard time. St. Ed's got delayed, and they couldn't even get there till the next day. They got in 30 minutes before weigh-in started.
Oh, geez.
So it was a mess. He's just getting there. What do you remember from Reno?
So this was my junior year. So I was a returning state champ, and there was another kid from Oklahoma, from Choctaw, Oklahoma, one of the Oklahoma stud schools. and he was a senior, and he was a returning Oklahoma State champ, and I was 215 and weighing like 195.
Yeah, you were light.
Yeah, I was a small, really small 215, and this kid had already, so he was a senior, and he had already committed to go be a linebacker at OU, Oklahoma University.
Oh, he was going to the Sooners.
Yeah, so he's big dude. Probably cutting 15 pounds to make 215, and we're at weigh-ins, and they had just posted the seeds, and this guy was like, I'm the number 2 seed? Who the hell's number 1? I'm gonna crush him. And like, we're at weigh-in, and I'm like, oh shit. It's not me. That was probably the last time I was ever intimidated. I'm like, this dude's way bigger than me. But ended up beating him in the finals. So,
yeah. What was his name?
It was like Cedric Jones.
Yes, I remember that dude.
Yeah.
He was a monster.
Yeah, it was huge. Fortunately, probably a better football player than wrestler.
He's a pretty good wrestler too.
Yeah.
He was in the finals of Reno. So you win the Ironman. You and Scott Overholt, the first 2 ever Ironman champions, I believe. Both
Were we the only 2 that won it?
that year.
Really?
I think so.
Okay.
I think Joey had a.
That's good.
Heskett got beat by.
There were some studs.
There
at
were
the
some
lower
studs.
weights. Admittedly, my weight class that first year wasn't nearly as packed as some of the lower weights.
Yeah.
Scott probably had a pretty packed weight class though.
I think so. Yeah. Joey had that kid from. Was it? It was.
There was a kid from like South Dakota that was a stud in one of the middle weights.
I think that's who beat Joey.
Yeah.
Sabat. Was it Troy Sabat from?
There's a couple of names.
There was a couple of them. But and Sonny, I believe, also had a guy.
There was Abbas, but he was a little weight.
Right.
And then there was, I forget. I was trying to remember some of the names. Like, I remember there was a 4-time South Dakota state champ, and it was just, man, it was crazy. Like, remember the A6 Tiger All-Americans? I think we had like 3/4 of that All-American team was at the Ironman that year.
I think you're right. That first ever Ironman was brutal.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously it's still an awesome tournament. I think it was just as competitive then as it is now.
I think so also.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't have as many teams.
Right.
But
we had the best ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a who's who of talent.
Yeah.
That was there. Yeah. Reno was really interesting. I remember watching Joey wrestled, Heskett wrestled Sanderson.
Oh yeah. Did Kale or
Yeah,
one of the other
he wrestled
ones?
Kale.
Okay.
And he lost it. It was a close match.
Did Kale beat him?
Beat him by a point.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they went on to become teammates.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so Jeff wins. He wins Reno, right? And then he goes on in his senior year. So he's won every single tournament out there. And then your senior year, you guys dropped, right?
Yeah, we dropped to D2.
So, what was just the numbers?
Yeah, it was so the Division I goes not by the number of students, but by the number of boys. So if it's a boys' sport, it's so even though the student population was going up, because that was the first year where every class was co-ed.
Okay.
Because so my freshman year was the first co-ed year, but they introduced basically girls 1 year at a time. So my senior year was the first year where we had 4 full classes that were completely mixed, and that dropped the boys' enrollment enough where we went from D1 to D2. So yeah, that kind of sucked not being D1, not being able to beat Eds a 5th time.
Yeah,
actually.
5th time.
Yeah.
But there was another guy out there who was also a state champion.
Yeah.
And there was talk, right, about him.
Yeah, so he was from St. Paris Graham.
Okay.
And he was the returning state champ at 189, and I was in D2, and then I was the returning 215-pound state champ, but was dropping down to 189 because Victor got big and went up to 215. And so not only did we switch divisions, and so that put us together, but I dropped a weight class, and so that put us together. And then I hurt my knee at the beginning of the year, so I sat out. Like, I didn't go to Reno my senior year.
Okay.
Because I tore some cartilage in my knee, and so I had knee surgery. So I was out for probably half the season. And the other guy's name was Avery Zirkle, And he was a stud, and he was just winning every tournament. And like I think they went to Alliance, or they went to one of the tournaments that Walsh went to as well, but I didn't wrestle because I was hurt.
Okay.
And so there's all this talk about Jeff's dodging Avery, and Jeff's afraid of Avery, and like, okay, we'll find out. I don't think so, but we'll see. But yeah, that was a big talk, and I think you remember the Brakeman report?
Yeah, it was our Bible back then of who's who and what's what, right?
Yeah, he did it. I haven't seen it in 25 years, but I think there was like a big like page or two write-up about this is going to be this clash of returning state champs. So it was probably one of the bigger D2 finals.
I remember watching it. I came down to see it. Yeah, I remember. And I think you smoked him pretty good, didn't you?
Yeah, I beat him. I think it was 10-4.
Okay.
And it was, I got 5 takedowns to his 4 escapes. So.
So yeah, you pretty much dominated the match.
It's funny so again thinking back, I remember all the build up to that, and it was one of those where it was never. I don't think it was ever really a close match. But 20 years later, it's a memory that, man, I'm glad I won that. Like not anymore, but I used to have dreams where I was like a 2-time state champ that lost in the finals.
Oh my.
I was just like 15 years after graduating high school and having these dreams, and I wake up, I'm like, no, that's not what happened.
That's weird.
Yeah. It's funny how like what you remember and how you remember things.
But to wake up and like, no, that didn't happen.
Yeah, right? Like, no, that's not right.
No. No, that's funny, man. So your senior year ends, and like you were the most decorated guy coming out because you had, what'd you graduate with? Like a 4.3, 4.4 GPA, something like that.
Yeah, I was second in the class.
Man, so, who was first?
It was actually a buddy of mine, Matt Kraninger was his name.
He was first. Yeah. So you graduated. So you were on every #1 academic team, A6 Dream Team. You were ESPN's Male Athlete of the Month, right?
Yeah, there was something
like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
So, and then won your last 94. So you were coming out. You were the top. Had to be the top recruit in the country.
At my weight class.
Yeah.
Not like a pound. I think they do that pound for pound stuff now.
They do it now.
Yeah. I don't even know if they did that back then.
I don't know. It's so long ago,
Yeah.
And then you decided to go to Penn State, right?
Yep.
And you spent your entire time at Penn State. So, what do you remember most? I mean, what do you think is your fondest memory of just your entire wrestling career?
Well, definitely at some point in high school. That was, college didn't go like it was supposed to for me on the wrestling side. But man, just looking back, the stuff we did in high school was pretty awesome. We were on top of the world. It felt like, and I was telling Ben earlier this morning, like we got to experience something that 99.9% of people will never be able to even fathom. So that was pretty awesome. He asked how that impacted me kind of going forward. And I think it just gives you a confidence in yourself, right? Like we got to that level. We obviously had to work really hard to get to that level. So we learned a lot about discipline and determination and just being mentally tough and all that. But it also just, like, I walked away with a confidence that I felt like if I put my mind to something, I think I can do it. Right or wrong. But
it's pretty awesome to think that and to have that. That's why and you can use the sport of wrestling, or the sport of wrestling can use you. But utilizing wrestling and because for me, like, I walked away from the sport kind of angry about the way things ended for me, and you know what I mean?
Same for me. I spent 4 years disappointing myself in college, right? That was pretty rough. And I actually like I walked away after Big Ten's my senior year, so it was my fourth year. I had one more year of eligibility, and I walked off the mat. Like my last match, I was winning big and just got tired and just basically stopped wrestling and lost the match. Didn't qualify for NCAAs. I was like, you know what? I'm just done with the sport. And I took 10 years. I probably took 10 or 12 years where I didn't watch a wrestling match, didn't follow wrestling or anything. Just kind of removed myself from the sport. And I forget what got me back into it, but now that I got past that, right? So same as you, like I was bitter. I was burnt out. I was just disappointed. But now I look back and I just remember the good times, right? And I learned, like I became the person I am because of those experiences and because of that mental toughness that I learned, mostly in high school. And do I wish college had gone better? Yeah, of course. But all's well that ends well too.
Yeah. And it's because it's such a tough sport, and it's so hard to keep that edge mentally.
Yeah.
And people, and it's the burnout rate. It's high.
Yeah, I see it. You see it now with kids too. I mean, it just happens year over year, and it's not a lack of talent. It's not a lack of ability. It's just at some point you just don't have it anymore, or you just don't want it as bad as the next guy. Like I remember in college there was a Pennsylvania kid that was my year. He went to Lehigh, and we had a dual meet with Lehigh. I think it was my senior year, and I beat him. A close match, and he had beaten me once. I think he beat me once, but I beat him in the dual meet. And then the year ended terribly, and I stopped wrestling. And he came back the next year and was a national champion.
Wow!
So it was one of those where, it's not like I wasn't at the level.
Right.
He just wanted it way harder. I mean, clearly he worked harder than I did that next year. I sat around, drank beer, and went to watch football games. And he was training. But, it wasn't a ability thing. I think it was just a desire thing at some point. You do something for 20 years, and at some point you get tired.
Well, what's the what's the light at the end of the tunnel with wrestling? It's an you're trying to be an NCAA champion, right?
Unless you're Kale Sanderson,
right.
You're not going to become a millionaire wrestling.
And that is a fact.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. So, what do you take away from your time in wrestling that you use in your business today?
I think it's the mental toughness. It's that I know I can do whatever I have to do to get something done. If it's, if I got a deadline on Thursday, something's got to be done Thursday morning, and I just found out Monday, I'll just stay up for 3 days straight because I know I can. It's a little harder now that I'm 43 than when I was, 25. But I think it's that mental toughness, and like I said, it's that confidence, right? It's I know I'm good enough, and I know I have the toughness to do what it takes to get it done if I really want to, right? And then you gotta kind of pick your battles there. You can't do that with everything, but it's just that. It's probably those two things: confidence and mental toughness.
I love that because it is. You can do stuff because you've done harder stuff
right
in the past, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It conditions you. Dan Gable said, life's easy after wrestling. And that quote that's true.
Right.
Because it's the sport will chew you up and grind you up, but that suffering is something that's really that prepares you, for life. And that's why I think if everybody could just wrestle even a couple of years, it'd be a great thing to have, in your business. And,
right.
So tell me a little bit before we get off here about Denver, Colorado. What's going on out there now? How's life treat you out there? Do you enjoy that area?
Yeah, absolutely. So I moved to Houston right out of college.
Okay.
Not a huge fan of Houston.
You didn't like Houston?
No, I was never a big fan. Houston is it's a big city. It's very diverse, fun city to be single and in your 20s and starting your career. It's low cost of living, tons of people, just tons of stuff to do. But there's no like outdoor activity to do, and the weather has got to be the worst weather I've ever experienced in the U.S.
Humidity?
Yeah, heat, humidity, and it's flat as a pancake.
Yeah.
So I like being outdoors. Big into mountain biking, hiking, skiing, and so I spent 15 years in Houston. Met my wife there, had some kids, had our first 2 kids there, and we probably spent the last 10 years trying to figure out an exit strategy. So we eventually executed on that. It took a while, but we've been in Colorado for 6 years, and man, I knock on wood, I hope we never leave. It's awesome.
Is it?
I just love it. Like I tell people, if I never go on vacation again, that's fine because I live on vacation.
Really?
Like, I just love where we live. So we live a little west of downtown. So
Okay.
I work downtown, so I do about a 45-minute commute each day. But we live up in the mountains, and our house is at 8,000 feet. So in my drive home, I go up I-70 driving west, and there's this point where it kind of crests, and you see this panoramic view of the Continental Divide. So there's just massive mountains. And 6 years into it, that drive never gets old. It's just like, okay, this is where I want to be forever. And I got 3 boys, and so they just run around outside. I mean, they do kid things too. They're on their iPads way too much. But,
Yeah.
you know, just seeing them be outside and have access to that, that's the way my wife and I wanted to raise our kids, and so we love it there.
I got to get out there. I got to check it out. I've still never been.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It is getting overcrowded, and cost of living is going crazy.
It has it? Yeah.
Yeah, we got all the Californians and Texans.
Yeah, people are coming in. It's a
Yeah.
hot spot.
But man, it's worth it for us.
Yeah.
Like I said, I hope we never leave.
What activities are your boys involved in?
They're big skiers. Both my 11 and 9-year-old passed mom and dad as far as skiing ability this year.
Wow.
Which was like my 11-year-old at the end of the season. He's like, "Hey Dad, let's go race down this big steep mogul run." And you know, I'm like I said, a relatively confident person.
Yeah, and you're in good shape.
Yeah,
You know,
and
you can do it.
I've been skiing for 20 years, and I'm like, "Okay, sure thing, buddy." And at the top of it, he's like cutting me off. And I'm thinking, is he doing that by accident? And I realized, no, he's doing that on purpose. And I was like, you little shit, but I'm really proud of you.
Yeah.
And then he beat me. So he legitimately flat out beat me. I didn't hold back or anything. It was like 99% awesome and 1% like, wow, there's a little ego bruise, but mostly awesome. And the 9-year-old's just as good.
Is he really?
Yeah, like they're really good skiers. They haven't really taken to the team sports. Like my 9-year-old's played soccer a couple of years and kind of lukewarm on that. They're more skiing, biking, and running.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Well, it's
No wrestling yet.
yet. Is that something you're going to introduce them to, or are they interested in? Or?
You know, occasionally they know I wrestled, and occasionally they'll say, "Hey, Dad, let's go into the garage." And I got a kind of home gym set up.
Okay.
It's got some mats down. I'm like, "Hey, let's go wrestle." And they've asked me a couple of times, and there's never a whole lot of follow up with it. Like, well, I'll do it. We'll go out there and roll around once, and it'll be 6 months before they ask again.
Yeah.
So who knows?
You never know.
Maybe.
Never know. Well, it's
My 3-year-old's the mean one. He's already beating up his older brothers.
so there might be your wrestler right
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which so then you get to go relive that again. How is wrestling? It seems to be growing out there a little bit.
Yeah, it's bigger than I thought it was. So do you follow NCAAs?
Mm-hmm.
So you know Ryan Deacon?
Yeah.
He's a Colorado kid.
Okay.
There's a bunch of kids, twins, and that went to Duke. The Fine Silvers.
Okay.
I'm probably messing that name up, but they're NCAA All-Americans. That one of them that are Colorado kids. The heavyweight that took second at NCAAs too.
To Gabe. Yeah.
To Gable. Colton. What's his last name?
Yeah.
He's a Colorado.
The kid with the big
Yeah,
hair.
yeah, exactly. So he's a Colorado.
He's a Colorado boy? Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's pretty big, and I actually think it goes by UNC that I always get confused with North Carolina, but University of Northern Colorado has a pretty good team now.
Do they?
Yeah, they're D1 in wrestling.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure they qualified more than a couple kids to NCAA's. So that's just north of Denver, so it's not that far away.
You ever check out a match?
No, I haven't yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, I've been wanting to figure out like what high schools have the best programs, just to, one, we don't know where we're going to send our kids to high school, but it would be fun to go just roll around with.
Yeah.
Again, I did that. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was back here, and I worked out with some of the Walsh High School kids.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I was more experienced and bigger than most of them, so it was fun. I could barely move the next day. Oh my god! And I'm active. Like I do CrossFit. I bike, mountain bike.
No, dude, you're in great shape. But that's different.
Man, it's just the muscles you use when you're wrestling that you don't normally use.
Yeah.
It was a reminder of how tough the sport is.
Well, it's not even that. Like, and I agree 100%. But the last time I did it, I had black and blue finger marks on my arms.
I did too, actually.
Your skin just isn't conditioned for that.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to
Yeah.
think about doing it every single day.
Oh yeah.
So.
No, but mid-40s guys aren't meant to work out that hard every day.
Not every day.
We got to rest a little bit more.
A little bit more. So, but hey, my man, thanks for coming on with me. It was awesome catching up with you, and this documentary is going to be pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah,
like I said,
too.
It's always awesome to be home, and thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. It was good having you on, and we'll talk to everyone next time.